My name is Mary Beth Brust, and I'm the Director of Teaching and Learning here, obviously, in Pembroke. And we have a lot of people here tonight that are going to be a part of explaining to you what the math curriculum looks like for grades K through 6. We have purchased a new program to assist us with that, and we're going to try to give you, as best we can, a way to get a sort of a bird's eye view into your child's classroom so that some of the vocabulary and some of the terms that you're hearing when they come home, some of the activities that they may be doing, become more familiar to you. And we also wanted to give you an opportunity to ask any questions that you might have about the program or about any of the feedback that you might have for us in regards to what you're seeing at home, or what your child's experience is like with this program. So as I said before, we have a lot of people here with us tonight who are going to be assisting in any way that they can with questions that I won't be able to answer, or questions that they're better suited to answer. So we have, first and foremost, we have Paul McDonald, who is a teacher here. We have Mark Duffy, the content supervisor for math, Michael Murphy, the principal here at North, Jen Simmons, the assistant principal here at North, Beth Drolet, the assistant principal at Hobbamock, Dr. Catherine Glaude, who is the principal at Bryantville, and David Summergrad, the principal at Hobbamock. So we have a full house and a lot of people who are really excited about this program. And I forgot one other person. We have Superintendent Obie, who is in the back as well. But we have a lot of people here who are very excited about this. So again, this is for you. We'll be stopping and asking you for questions at any time. Please feel free to jump right in. So obviously we want you to have a better understanding about how our math resources connect with the 2011 Massachusetts mathematics frameworks. We want you to understand sort of the philosophy behind the work that you're seeing at home and what your kids are talking about when they're talking about math. And we also want you to have a couple of ideas for, we have some tools that would be useful for you perhaps to use at home when you're helping your kids with their homework or any study skills. Okay, so this one, I'm going to turn this over to Mark Duffy, and while he's speaking to you, I'm going to we have a little technical excitement, so I'm going to have to turn it on manually over here.
So just to give you a little bit of history in terms of where Massachusetts is in our standards, back in around 2006, 2007, the Department of Ed started to take a look at the math frameworks that were adopted in the late 90s. And they started to begin a revision process. They really started to reflect on where we were with MCAS, what the assessment system had accomplished, and where we were in terms of standards, and how we compared not only at a national level, but also at an international level. And around the year 2010, 2011, the state of Massachusetts adopted the Massachusetts framework, the new framework for mathematics. It was based on the Common Core standards, but it included additional Massachusetts standards. And as they went through this process, it's about a 3 or 4 year process that involved educators, administrators, people in nonprofit organizations. They really wanted to reflect on what we had accomplished to date since the Education Reform Act back in the early 90s, and where we wanted to go, what the vision looked moving forward. And there was a big emphasis as they looked at the standards to make them more explicit, more specific, more focus in terms of rather than a mile wide and an inch deep, to have more depth and sort of a less is more approach. And one of the things that they wanted to really be explicit in the writing of the standards is to try and shift to a more conceptual understanding. That we wanted our students in the Commonwealth to really be taught a process for conceptual understanding. We really wanted to emphasize the learning process in addition to the content. And so we arrived at a set of standards that really emphasized on teaching students how to think rather than what to think, rather than just memorize algorithms. And as that has come to fruition over the past 4 or 5 years, and we've really started to implement the standards across the Commonwealth, more and more math programs have been created to really mirror and align with that new set of standards and that new thinking, really. That we want all students to be challenged in terms of how they think, because really in the end that's a lifelong skill. Learning how to learn. It's one of the most important things that we can teach our students. The content is great, but we really want our students to learn how to learn. We want them to learn how to think. And you're probably experiencing that. For those of you that are parents right now of elementary school students, you're probably experiencing that when the assignments are coming home that your children are working on right now. You're probably seeing that shift. You're probably seeing things that are a little different than how you were taught in a classroom. And you're probably questioning why that may be. And there is a history to it. And you can go back and you can look online on the DESE website, Department of Elementary and Secondary Ed website, and see the history of how that came to fruition.
Whoa, that's not good.
Oh, I don't need this. I'm already late.
Somebody will come. Anybody out there?
Do you have a phone?
No. Sorry. Somebody! Hello? There are 2 people stuck on an escalator and we need help. Now, would somebody please do something?
Help!
I don't believe this. You gotta be kidding me.
I'm gonna cry.
Well, there's not enough left to do, is it?
Hello? Hey, don't worry about it. I'll fix it in a second.
He said he can fix it. All right. All right. That's more like it. He says he can fix it.
Walking down the sidewalk, kicking my feet as I'm moving to the music. Step to the beat. I woke up today, canceled all my plans, and I stepped right outside with my guitar in my hands, and the notes became loud as the sound caressed the air, and I kicked it up a notch as I strolled without a care, 'cause I'm going down the road to a brand new place, and I'll get there with.
This is some of the stuff that Mark just reviewed. In terms of the 2011 frameworks, which, sometimes we call them the new frameworks and the new standards, and I think I need to reiterate this, that they're not new and that they are things that we should be definitely starting to master and to be able to deliver in a way that is going to help your children succeed in the testing environment that they will be sort of coming of age in. So one of the things that the EnVision 2.0 program emphasizes is conceptual understanding, procedural fluency, and application through problem-based learning. And everything in the EnVision program is really tied to these standards of mathematical practice. And I think that, we show that funny video of the escalator, but obviously we don't want our kids to be those people that are sitting on an escalator and not really fully engaged enough in their own world and in their environment to be able to do that problem solving. So a lot of this math curriculum is certainly very complex, but a lot of it has to do with creating really good problem solvers. Good problem solvers in math become good problem solvers in any aspect of their life. So these are really habits of mind and tools that students, we believe, that are going to really help to enrich the students and to help make them better students as they progress academically. Mr. Murphy.
So first of all, I just want to thank everybody for coming out tonight. I know it's not easy to get away. This is generally the time that you're doing EnVision math, I believe, isn't it, with your kids? So thank you all for coming out. It means a lot. I also just kind of wanted to preface this slide about, why EnVision 2.0 math and how did it kind of come about. Last spring, Dr. Hackett actually pulled together a group of teachers, administrators. He got input from children. And what we did is we sat around actually these very tables that you're sitting at right now, and we took a look at the materials. We worked with representatives from the company that came in, and we thought that this was the best way to go. It teaches our kids to think critically, which we all need going forward in our math program. So basically, why did we do this? Because it's research-based to support effective progress of the program. So research-based, we're not going to do anything for the kids that hasn't been tried before. and that we don't see positive results. So that's exactly why we're doing this. Pearson, this is a Pearson product. Pearson has put a lot of time and research into this. And we felt confident as administrators and teachers in the district that this is going to work for our kids. We knew that there were going to be some bumps along the road, and there's going to be plenty more bumps, absolutely. This is the first year in us rolling it out. But as a whole, this is an amazing curriculum that's going to teach our children to think critically. And that's what you have to leave with tonight, just thinking about critical thinking skills. This addresses all the new math standards, and the content is presented appropriately. So at this point in time, all 3 elementary schools in the district have a scope and sequence that they were following, and we're following it the exact same way. The same skills that are taught at North are being taught at Bryantville at the same time, at the same sequence. This is just going to benefit our children when they get off to middle school. You got to think about this as an effect where first grade influences second grade and all the way up. So we have to start thinking about having that mindset. The other thing is the focus on problem-solving strategies, obviously with the escalator situation kind of going up. How do you work around a problem? Kids are going to come into situations where they're taking a look at problems in their EnVision math at night, and I know you probably are scratching your head too, because I know I do with some of the things. But how can you work around it? What do you have for things at your fingertips that you can actually use a set of tools? Just like a teacher has a set of tools that she uses in her classroom, kids need to have a set of tools that they bring for all problem-solving activities. It's tailored to individual student ability levels. So the nice thing about EnVision is it's multi-tiered. It's actually going to be able to meet the needs of our highest performing learners, where it has extension activities, and also the lowest performing learners. We're able to modify and provide some accommodations for those kids right within the curriculum, which is a really nice feature. It integrates and enhances digital tools. So one of the things that maybe your children in the past have done was the park testing online. They may have been part of that trialing period a couple of years ago. So a lot of the tools that are online right now are really critical for our kids to start learning how to use. So the park assessment is like the MCAS assessment in the past. Just a show of hands for park assessments. Who knows what I'm talking about when I say park assessments? Perfect. There may be some others that have kindergarten or first grade students that maybe have not heard of that term yet, but it's a statewide standardized test. And what we do is eventually we're going to get to a point where we're all doing tests on computers, and we have to know how to kind of navigate those tools. So there may be drop-down rulers, there may be drop-down calculators, that this program is now going to allow us to actually get our kids kind of a first-hand look at how this looks and how it kind of plays out in the classroom. At-home access for families. So that's where you come in. You're able to log into EnVision at home just using your Internet Explorer, open up, and you're able to see your children's homework. Kids are doing homework online, some of them, if their teachers ask them to do it online. Other kids are doing it a paper and pencil version. There's no one way that's better, but there's that accessibility for the online piece so the parents can kind of see as well. And there's also a lot of built-in videos for the parents to be seeing as well. The math diagnostic and intervention materials, this is where we are actually able to target some of our struggling learners, and we're able to kind of pinpoint those exact areas, those exact skills that need to have more repetition, and then also a whole set of extension activities so those kids can actually learn the skills necessary. And so those math diagnostic kits are critical for our general educators and also our special educators. And then the adaptability of this program to meet the workshop model of teaching math. So all of our teachers in the district were teaching and have been teaching over the years the workshop model, which integrates a lot of hands-on activities. And what this does is this whole program slides right into that mindset. So our teachers are not thinking differently. They're actually using the same style of teaching and just making this it's just a nice little partnership right along the way. So we've heard a lot of great feedback from our teachers, and I know we have teachers here tonight that can probably speak to that as well if you do have questions. So that's a little bit about why EnVision. Next slide. Perfect.
Thanks, Michael. I'm Catherine Glaude, principal at Bryantville, and thanks for coming tonight. What I wanted to talk a little bit about was what does a day look like? How is it different from previous resources? I'm very excited about how teachers are using EnVision Math at Bryantville and the other schools. But this is pretty much the format of what a 90 or 85-minute minute block of math looks like at all grade levels. There's a routine opening, so when students enter the classroom, there's something that they do at their seats. It might be a problem to solve. It might be that they're doing it individually. It might be doing it in pairs. It might be actually projected on the screen, so there's lots of different resources. What I love about EnVision is it's resource rich, so it can fit the teacher style and also what the children need. There's an activator, which could be the day's challenge. It might be also a video that the teacher shows, and it stops it at critical points, and kids solve and work on it together. It gives the teacher a sense of, are kids ready for the lesson that they're going to do that day? So it gives them a direction for where to go. Then there's a focus lesson, again, with lots of different resources, videos, materials that the teacher can use, actually computer games as well that fit. But the teacher has a focus, which would be probably the old-fashioned way of teaching math that I came to, where the teacher might stand there and go through the math. But this is where the whole thing is different, because that's one small piece. Because as Mark Duffy said, we really want to get kids into the materials, solving, working with each other. Those are the skills they need for the future. And then, as Michael said, the workshop model piece is the next part. And the workshop model piece is where, and it's beautiful to see this in action. I'm so excited to see this in math. I think a lot of teachers in the past used the workshop model for reading, where kids were doing different things and a teacher was reading with a small group and then they would rotate. So now suddenly this is what math looks like different. Math has the teacher working with a small group, and she can pull a different group each day depending on maybe what she saw during the focus. Like, oh, I really need to bring these 3 kids together and do more in-depth on this skill. And while they're working with her for maybe 10 minutes, the rest of the class you might have a group working on the computers, doing the assignment that fits the lesson. You might have some sitting at their seats or working with a partner doing independent work. You might have a group playing some games that are really practicing their skills and fluency. And you might have just other groups doing other math-related things. And then the teacher gets to decide, how do we rotate? Do we move around every 10 minutes? Do we stay in this group for a little bit longer? So there's lots of great decisions and resources that a teacher gets to pull in. And it's amazing to see how quickly the students have adapted to this model in the math classroom. And it's really a wonderful thing to see. I love going in classrooms. And then the end of the lesson is a time where the students get a chance to really talk to either each other or do it individually or talk to the teacher about what they learned, and it gives the teacher some valuable information. Maybe the reflection, we call it an exit slip, might be that they do a really fast problem based on the concept of the day, and then teachers get an opportunity then that night to take a look at it and say, oh, tomorrow I need to pull this group and do this skill, and this group and do this skill. So it's really self-directed. Yeah. Okay, the question was, and I'm going to repeat questions because I know they're taping back there, was about the vocabulary. First of all, I should have said all of the things on the side are options, so you may not do everything each day. It's choices that teachers make. But a big part of this program is the math vocabulary, and if you look in the student, if they bring their printed copies home, you can see the purple pages in the book are the vocabulary, and they build on each other. So there are lessons and opportunities and things in the program itself of how to teach this vocabulary, how to encourage students when they're talking in small groups to use the vocabulary, because that's the best way they're going to learn it. So it's a big part of the program, and it builds each year. And it's one, again, as a principal, walking in classrooms and seeing first graders using terms that I would have seen maybe in 5th grade, and like you've probably seen that at home, as they're really, and knowing what they mean, and being excited, like, look how cool I am. I know this term. Thanks. And so this is a picture of the guided workshop model. It's called the workshop model or guided workshop model. And as you can see, right here. The teacher's probably sitting right here. So this would have been a small group that's working with the teacher on a particular skill. You can see another group working back there. And over on the side, there were kids doing computers or maybe some on the floor playing games. So there's quite a bit of activity in the room as this is going on. Do you want me to keep going? Okay. So these are some terms I've actually talked a little bit, and other people will go through these a little more. These are terms you're probably hearing at home. Number talk, which I'm going to show. Mary Beth has a video that she's going to show in a minute about a number talk. Solve and share is just one of the things, the resources that teachers have a problem, and they have to really talk over their solutions. That's what's different from previous lessons in math and teaching that I've seen in math, where students are working together and they have to defend their solutions. And they also learn that there's lots of different ways to solve a problem. Some may be more efficient than others, and they can talk about that. Lots and lots of resources, math tools, and I know Michael is going to talk through some of the tools that people use later in this presentation. The Practice Buddy is the online piece, and again, it's another part in this presentation that you hear, as are reading mats, which we'll talk a little bit about later, and the app. If you don't know about Bounce, it might be something that you want to learn about later in the program, so stay tuned. So here's number talks, and this is happening in all classrooms, starting in kindergarten through first grade. And it's really, the purpose is to talk about the strategy you used to solve a problem. And you need to use the vocabulary from math to as you're talking about it. And the problem is a concept that you've been working on. And you get to talk and share, and children see lots of different ways to solve it. And the teacher also teaches lots of different strategies. So I wanted to show a clip that came from a first grade classroom.
For numbers, what does that equal sign in the middle actually mean? What does that mean, Victoria?
It means the things on the side have the same value.
The things on each side have the same value. Awesome. Okay, did somebody solve and want to share if this equation is true or not? Mikey, see what you got. Okay, so you wrote two new equations. 3 plus 4 equals
7.
And
7 plus 1 equals 8.
So does that mean the equation is true or not true?
Not true.
Why is it not true?
Because they're not the same, sum.
Yeah, it's not the same sum. They're not the same value. Awesome. Did someone come up with a different way to do this? Lily. A number line? Okay, good. Okay, so what does that number line say?
7.
You started at what number?
3 and 4 hops.
And 3 and 4 hops, and you found out that 3 plus 4 is 7. Okay, so you know that side. And then what did you do to figure out the other side? So you started at what number?
7.
And took how many hops?
1.
And what did you come up with? So is that equation true or false?
False.
Excellent. Sit down. Thank you. Did anybody figure this out a different way? I love all these cans. My goodness, Ryan, what did you do?
I use circles.
Circles? All right, let me see. Okay, so you knew 4 plus 4 was 8.
But if you cross 1 out, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It will be 7.
So you used a doubles fact to help you with that 3 plus 4. Awesome. And then how did you figure out the 7 plus 1?
You just do add one more set.
So yeah, you just counted on to figure that out? Fantastic. Anybody figure out anything different? Sadie? This is going to be our last share for now. You can just go draw it if you can't remember what you want to say. It doesn't have to be perfect, Sadie. Don't worry about it. This isn't art class, okay? Alright, so you made a 10 frame. Okay, so can you tell me about what's in your 10 frame?
I put 7 in there, and then I counted on 1 more.
So you knew 7 plus 1 was 8. Did you think about a 10 frame for 3 plus 4 also? And what did you figure out that answer was? It was 7. Awesome. Thanks, Sadie. All right, we're going to stop right now, but who can remind me, what does that equal sign in the middle actually mean?
It means the things have the same thing.
The things have, so the equations or the numbers on either side have the same. Who remembers that word with the V? Value. Awesome.
So they were studying about, obviously that day, about equal sides and the equation mark. And when it starts a number talk, it's mental math. So she put the problem on the board and everybody solving it silently with mental math. And then each day she calls a few different people to show a different solution each day. So it's about that was maybe 7 minutes or something like that, 6 minutes. It's a very fast, quick process with a lot of great practice of those strategies that they're using to solve. Oh, Michelle was here. Michelle Matheson, the assistant principal at Bryantville, was going to be here tonight, and she had a family, something happened with family, so she had to go home. So the solve and share is just exactly what we were talking about earlier. It's part of the computer. So as you're seeing it like this is what the students see. It's played and it's read. You can see over there if we'd click, it would actually read the problem for them. And then children can work at their desk. They have the materials and manipulatives that they're using. They can solve the problem at their desk, and then it will play the video and also solve it for them, so then they can talk about the strategy that was used here. So it's just another way to engage them in a problem-solving situation. Now I know it's Michael. Not that I'm trying to get rid of the mic here, but...
Perfect. So we are talking now about math tools. So the really nice thing that we just kind of saw Dr. Glad walk us through was kind of different ways that kids are learning math. And what's really nice is that kids are learning from each other in this whole entire process. So we saw some pictorial representations there. We saw kids writing equations. And then we saw kids doing just the mental math like you were speaking of. So this is where it all comes together in the classroom. And how do we do that? We do it through the use of math tools. So on your tables, you probably have some manipulative kits. Feel free to go through those and take a look at them. They've never been opened. These are our extras, but I'm allowing you to open them if you'd like to. So what you might find in there are some base 10 blocks, some things that look like Unifix cubes with some fractions on them. These are all things that are being used within the classroom to try to give a greater understanding to the math concepts for the kids. And it's our hope that the kids will use these manipulatives as they see fit. So they're gonna say, oh, I could use this manipulative to solve this equation. And we talk about, again, that guy in the escalator. What tools can you take out of your toolkit to figure this problem out? It's in the bag. Not everything's in the bag. Hopefully there's something going on upstairs as well. But and we also have some other things, kind of some nice visuals. We have scales. So when we're talking about equality and balance, and this is how it actually integrates into the science realm as well, which is a really nice aspect about this program. We have good old-fashioned money. And if you take a look up here on the display, what we have is the whole idea of kind of part to whole. Okay. Well, we can put 5 plus 5 will give us 10. We know that 2 times 5 will equal 10. As long as we're getting to the answer, we don't care how we get there, as long as the child knows what steps he or she needs to do to get us there. Obviously, to come up with the answer of 12, you could do an array. Some children are more visual in their learning, so maybe they're doing an array 4 times 3, go up 4, go over 3, gives you 12 dots. So these are many, many things that you can actually be doing. And then you have the hundredths number line, the tenths number line, and the ones number line. So we're probably starting here, kindergarten and first grade, and working our way up. So if you haven't seen those, you're about to see them. So get ready. And some of the other things that we see are the fraction strips. I think I have some of those up here. So it's really neat. It's like those foam things you can find at Staples or Michaels. They're really sturdy. They're going to hold up for kids. And you could probably get these on your own as well. So this is basically a fraction strip of 1/6. So as you can see, you can kind of bend them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. They also come apart. And you could actually build your own fractions. So this is a good visual representation for kids. And you'd be surprised at how many visual learners we have in our classrooms. And once they see this, they're like, that's what I need. So that's a little bit about those.
Hi, I'm Beth Droll. I am the new assistant principal and special ed team chair at Hobbamock. And so Practice Buddy is going to relate to something we talk about a few slides later in regard to the app that we have online. So earlier we talked a lot about the guided workshop model and teachers using assessment to kind of drive their instruction and determine what students know and what they don't know. So Practice Buddy is an online quick check. It's 5 questions that are driven directly from what is taught that day during the focus lesson and during the small group practices. So when teachers determine and decide where students are going to go, this allows them either at the end of the lesson, at the end of the day as part of the reflection, or part of the workshop model to see where kids are at and then determine next steps. So these questions are ones that if teachers don't have the technology in their classroom up and running, students can always answer in their books and they can use them directly from the book. But it's great from PTOs, and the district itself, that you provided us with the technology that we have so that we are able to do this and teachers are able to get immediate feedback on how students are doing in their classrooms so they're able to determine next steps.
Hello. So reading mats, I believe all the tables have an example. This is just another resource that comes with the EnVision program that's really helpful to teachers when they're creating the guided math centers. Centers might be another word that you're hearing the kids say. These mats bring in the other content areas into math. So you'll walk by a room and you'll hear kids like there's swimming or there's dinosaurs or there's space, and they're totally into what they're reading and like finding it fascinating, and they'll literally say, like, what does this have to do with math? And it's totally connected to math. And it goes with the content and it goes with the curriculum. And it's just another resource that EnVision's already created and one less step that our teachers have to take, which was why this program was so valuable. So you may hear your kids talking that at one of the centers, they had a really cool reading mat And that's what those are. It's bringing in the other content areas into the math and just giving them more exposure to math in real life situations.
All right, coming back to the Bounce app, an app for learning. So we've been talking a lot about how with the new math frameworks, there's a new or a deeper understanding of conceptual understanding of what students know and how they're able to actually apply that. Coming back to everything that Mark and Catherine and Jen and Mike and Mary Beth said, really when students come home and they have their homework, they may be a little bit stuck. And that's okay because we all get stuck at times. So what EnVision has brought in is this tool called Bounce Pages. So if you search on your Android or on your iPad, iPhone, or any smartphone, it's called Bounce Pages. And what that does is it brings you to a video that's 3 to 5 minutes reteaching the lesson. So there's two different things when you take a picture with your phone. It either brings you to two different videos. One video called Another Look, where there's stopping points during the video where you can have a conversation with your child about what is actually happening. So there's guided questions. So when the video stops, it actually asks the question and you can have a conversation with your child or children about the concept without having to think of those on your own. There's also another video called Quick Look, which just quickly summarizes the lesson itself. Also built in is coming back to that practice buddy. On some of the EnVision pages, they'll take you back to practicing. So if you're wondering, is my child really getting this? They can go online and retake those questions and it'll tell them whether they're understanding or not. So if you're wondering, how do I know if they're getting their homework right? Or how do they work more independently without me being there self-checking their work? The practice buddy at home allows them to do that. So the Bounce Pages, again, so it's not, when you're looking for it, it's Bounce, capital B, Pages, capital P. Any smartphone, and it will take you directly to links and resources that either you can use with them or they can use on their own. And it really is a great resource, and it's a free app. Time for questions and answers.
Okay, so the question is about the scope and sequence involved in the math standards, and I'm going to ask Mr. Duffy to jump in on that.
Thanks. Within each grade level, the standards were written to be coherent. There's a progression. We tend to think of standards as a vertical progression, like maybe next year, but the way the standards are written and the way that they're distributed, I guess, within each grade level, it spirals. Things do come back. You're building in a progression where you start from the beginning of the year to the middle of the year to the end of the year. It's not as spiraling per se as, say, Everyday Math, which was a program we had recently, where you may see a more of a spiraling over time, over a vertical. It's not to say that, things are built upon a vertical progression grade-wise, but within the grade level, you're seeing spiraling, you're seeing cumulative review, and things build upon what was taught previously. So it's very coherent in terms of within the grade level.
Period. And it's differentiated in such a way where we're actually meeting all of those learners, our highest performing learners, our average performing learners, and then our lower level learners that need the extra help. So it's already structured like that, which is really nice, but it's about mastery. And I think that was one of on the first slides. That's a very important key to EnVision.
One of the things you'll find out, if you look at the book, the pages are color-coded, and part of the spiraling is you'll see yellow pages, which is a concept that they've had before, and we understand the importance of it, and the publishers understand the importance of it, so they go back and it's kind of tips you off that you've seen it before, but it's an important concept and it must be reviewed to just move on for later on. So it does a good job, and you'll see, if you see a yellow page in there, say, well, this looks like a 5th grade concept. Well, it was. If you're even in the 6th grade, it's that important, we have to get back to it.
Yeah, so all right. So the question, I think, has to do with the standards, and I'm not exactly sure if you're asking if a student has mastered the standards at a grade level, what happens?
For the Common Core 2011 math standards, they didn't eliminate things that you have to make up for at home or anything like that. It was just kind of a restructuring. Like one of the big examples was 5th grade, we used to do a whole data statistics probability unit. And then when this Common Core standards came out, that was gone from 5th grade, but it's at 6th grade. So it was just kind of more like a restructuring. Nothing is gone. And I know I'm hearing a lot from parents about in third grade, we were math facts, and they're not doing math facts. Like, what do I do? Do I have to do it at home? And you don't necessarily have to do it at home. They're going to get there eventually. But a lot of this is a year of building the concept and the understanding before getting to the actual algorithm of how to do it. That's the focus, is not just, oh, this is how you multiply, do the ones, carry, do that, cross it out. It's like, we're gonna help you understand what multiplication is before we just show you that. And it was a hard thing for us to even, as teachers, to kind of switch. I wasn't totally switched in 2011. It took me a few years to be like, really, what is this? I don't get this way of division. I'm not going to even try to show my kids how to do this because I don't get it. But once you get it, it opens light bulbs. Oh my gosh, why didn't I do this when I was younger? And kids that struggle see it in another way. And I think as people get through it, you'll kind of see those light bulbs a little more. It's just going to take some time.
So the question is about the math standards, the new math standards. But the new math standards, just to reiterate, are the Massachusetts mathematical framework that came out in 2011. So they're not so new anymore, right? So we're kind of into our 5th year almost of working with those standards. And they are different in that I think I'm not a math teacher. I'm a former history teacher. But from what my understanding of this is, and I'm sure our experts can give us more, but the difference is that a lot of things are being introduced earlier, but they're being introduced earlier, as Jen just said, they're being introduced conceptually. So we're asking kids to do some things that are very difficult in terms of their cognitive processing, but we're not asking kids to do a lot of algorithm sort of rote memorization stuff. They are still going to do that. That's not eliminated, but the emphasis is really on the conceptual understanding. So in terms of going back, I guess you could look at 2003 frameworks were there for math. I mean, if you wanted to go back in Massachusetts history and see the frameworks, the former set, I forget the last time. There's a crosswalk. Crosswalk, okay. So there's a crosswalk online too. I apologize, I didn't realize that. So you can find that. That's the $1 million question. So the question tonight is, how do I help my student at home without really messing them up and showing them the way that I learned the problem, but maybe is not the way that the teacher has introduced the concept or is working with that concept in the classroom. It's a great question. It's one we hear a lot. I'm going to defer to some teachers on this one because they're living this.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
It's a different program, okay, and it was scary at first. If you're used to worrying about grades, don't, okay? Do not worry. I know it's tough. They're still going to get into Harvard no matter what they get, so you can't think like that. But what we're doing is we're preparing them now.
So one of the things with the EnVision materials is that they are all online. So all the students have a log-on, and if you don't, just reach out to the teacher and they can give you a log-on, and you can see every page that they're doing, not just their homework, but what they did that day in class. So you could print off that page and check that button, or take a picture of that page and actually get to those videos. The other thing, just to reiterate what Mike said, is that it's really about communication. Our teachers are professional practitioners, and they're not lockstep with simply going page by page with the program. So if something isn't working for their kids in their classroom, they're embedding other tools and resources that are really good for the kids. You might see some Khan Academy videos, you might see some TED Marks, you might see a few other things infused into the program itself, because the program is not the illicit curriculum. Curriculum is embedded with our teaching, our learning, the assessments. So there's more to it. So if your child is at home and they're really struggling with the homework, don't have them sit there for 2-3 hours just to get it done. Communicate with the teachers. They know, they understand, and they will help them the next day. And it's not about spending that much time on the homework. As Paul said, it's really about looking at and grasping the concept and then letting go and moving on. And sometimes if we know that children struggle with, I need to get this all done or my teacher's going to be mad at me, we teachers at Bryanville, teachers at Hobbamock, and I'm sure teachers at North have conversations with the children themselves to let them know that It's not about spending an hour, 2 hours, or even 45 minutes on homework if you're at first, second grade, etc. It's really about the concept. So communication is really huge. So again, Bounce app is big, but more important than that is really knowing your child and knowing when they're done. Because if they come in frustrated the next day, not ready to learn, that's what puts teachers back more than anything else. I would think. Yes. Is this program statewide is the question. No, each district determines their own curriculum. I know that Massachusetts itself, there's no statewide curriculum. So Pearson this is a Pearson product, which is part of Park and the new development, but each, again, district determines what they use. Each district determines what they use. So there's a teaching, learning kind of coordinators, principals district-wide across Massachusetts. Each district determines which programs or models that they use for instruction.
How long has this company been around making the software?
So the question was, how long has the company been around? So the company itself, EnVision, is created from Pearson. So Pearson has had a model for this for a number of years. I know that they've done Park. They've been involved with a bunch of different things, but I couldn't give you a year. Great question. So the question was, are there any surrounding towns that use this program, and have we met with any surrounding towns? So in fact, we work with a cohort of surrounding towns that we meet monthly on as an administrative team. Teachers haven't been a part of it as of yet, but we're hoping to include them. And some of those towns include Duxbury, Situate, Hanover, Franklin, Norwood. There's at least Marshfield, Weymouth. So 8 to 10 towns surrounding us that we meet with monthly to talk about best practices, talk about supporting teachers, talk about supporting parents, talk about supporting students. Yes. Yes. Transition to the middle school was the question.
So we currently, the question was, how does the program piggyback or transition in the middle school and the high school? We currently actually use Pearson textbooks for grades 7 through 12 in math as well. They're not written by the same authors, so I can't say that it's the same program as the EnVision program, but it is through the same company. There is no, currently there's not a 7 through 12 program like EnVision. Once we get into the higher grade levels, they tend to be course-specific books. Algebra 1, Geometry, Algebra 2 tend to be written by different authors, but the goal, and I think to your question, would be to tie together the vocabulary, the language, the models that you saw, the math tools that you saw, vertically K to 12. I can say, if you remember the slide that had the bar diagrams and the arrays, as we transition into upper grade levels, we refer to them as area models, because really what students are finding is area in the end, which ends up in calculus where we want to find net area under a curve, and in physics, net area under a curve. So the idea that that's being introduced at a very young age, that kids are using bar diagrams, which really turn into area models, and as we transition into the upper grade levels, it's just outstanding. If you have children in the middle school or the high school that are multiplying binomials, polynomials right now, foiling, you may remember having to foil when you were a student, possibly first, outer, inner, last. You may recall. Well, we use area models now for that. We still use that acronym. We end up using that, but that bar diagram that you're seeing your young children use, that's what we're using to multiply x plus 2, the quantity of x plus 2 times quantity x plus 4. So being introduced at that earlier age, and take the numbers out and add variables. So we don't have a textbook series, a program like EnVision for grades 7 through 12. We are using textbooks from the same publisher, and we have to tie together the language and the vocabulary, K to 12. It's a great question. The question was, is there a summary of the tools and the strategies that students would be learning in their particular grade level? And the great example that you gave in terms of the slides that we saw earlier with the first grade and the fourth grade.
So that is a great question. So with each unit embedded within the EnVision program, are unit summaries that can be sent home at the beginning of each unit. That at this time I can't speak to whether all teachers are doing that across schools. I think that is a great question to reach out to specific teachers about, and something that we as administrative staff can talk about, because I think that's a really good point. Okay, yeah, so within each year for students, there's about 10 units. They actually call them topics. So if you're looking in the books, they're called topics. And within each topic, there's 8 to 10 lessons. So lessons range from a day to 3 days based on student understanding. We're noticing that as students are gaining the vocabulary that Dr. Glad talked about that are in each lesson or unit really, they're gaining more understanding. You heard the first grade students talking about value of numbers. Second graders are using the word subtraction or adding up, or even in October doing some classroom walkthroughs, we saw first grade teachers working with students on doubles plus one, which you wouldn't see towards later end of the year. So they're really gaining a more solid understanding of that. So coming back to the time frame and what that looks like, it really depends on the lessons themselves. But as we're moving forward, I think we're looking at using the workshop model to kind of drive how long the lessons are based on the concepts.
I'm watching Beth with this behind her, and this is something that you could kind of see as a summary, but it's every single grade. So if there's going to be like 8 things that all of your learners are going to hear every single solitary year from K to 6, it's these 8 mathematical practices. I was in a first grade room and watching them do a lesson on the modeling with mathematics and constructing viable arguments and critiquing, and I'm like, first grade, really? But they were, and you saw that in that video. They are using the word equation and expressions and understanding it, and they're in first grade, and it's actually kind of fascinating. But that piece, I think, is what's really helpful with this program, because when I was saying before that we didn't always buy in to some of the newer standards because it didn't make sense to us, it was also because the programs that we were using didn't support it. And this is the first time I really feel like the math program that we have in the buildings fully supports the curriculum we're supposed to be teaching so that we all can be on the same page. And I think that's just going to help the middle school. I think sometimes where we all had the same textbook program, but it didn't really match the curriculum very well, there was a lot of, well, I'm going to look at this resource and pull, and I'm going to look at this one, and I'm going to look at this one. And the consistency amongst the rooms and amongst the schools wasn't as great. And that's what this program really brings for us, is not only is it a great wealth of resources, but it's the same resources for every single kid in Pembroke. And that's, I think, kind of a big thing we didn't have before.
So where do we find that? Is that something I can
Yes.
find on the Pearson?
Yeah, and I think these are the first pages of all the math books too. Yeah. So it's all like in their actual math books. It was the first pages. They might have been ripped since. I know a lot of teachers were ripping those pages out and keeping them in the room in a binder. And as they were doing centers, because these are the things that they're going to come back to throughout the whole year. Maybe there'll be like centers that just focus on the modeling and using the tools. But in the math books, they're originally the first few pages, and then it would be part of the online textbook. If you can find the whole textbook online as well.
I actually have a handout.
Oh, perfect.
On those skills and questions you could ask at home on those skills. So if you want to take one as you leave.
Jumping in.
I just wanted to chime in first because I've been taking notes and listening to the questions. And first, I was in this room in June when administrators and teachers were looking at the EnVision product and trying to determine whether this was the right time to do this. And keep in mind that we had in the elementary schools 2 programs going already. There was a transition from after second grade, they switched to a different program. And these are products that are out there. There are 5 or 6, there's Investigations and Think Math and Everyday Math. And school systems around were picking from those. So now we have a consistent program K to 6. So that question about what happens after that, Mark Duffy is addressing, but I think we've smoothed things out where there was a bump within the elementary schools. And I just want to say a gosh moment for me is, I don't know about you, but I heard about equations in 7th grade. Now, that was a long time ago when I was in school, and I know we were doing them earlier than that here in Pembroke, but when first graders are talking meaningfully about equations and expressions, that's really about the concept piece. And we heard, there's conceptual, and then there's this term procedural fluency. We haven't ignored, and I think Mark can probably explain that better. What we were comfortable with, procedural, sort of how to follow the steps to get something done, that's still part of what's taught in math. It's not in quite the same sequence or the same place that we might have expected it. It's built on a conceptual understanding. So I just want to tell you, the teachers in this room in June, after looking at EnVisions and taking it for a couple of days and coming back, were thrilled and excited that we were going to make this move. And I feel like we're really well positioned now, because we're hearing from other towns. We're in EnVision 2.0, which is their next step, and we have a lot more materials than they had when they were using EnVision 1.0.
So the question is about the homework coming home and when a sheet comes home, and I know Dr. Glad had that ready.
It's a pretty simple answer. It's a heavy book, and it was hard for kids to carry back and forth. So I know that a lot of the teachers in the younger grades are just tearing off that page. But again, just to go back to that, if there's anything that comes home, just a quick note back to the teacher, because that's when they can take kids in the small guided groups and really help them if they have trouble with math. I know that this is a conversation that I know especially 5th and 6th grade teachers are having all the time. 4th, 5th, and 6th. It's much easier when you started with the program and you're building the vocabulary and all of that. So as Paul talked about, teachers in the upper grades have to keep going back to the yellow pages, and they actually can also access curriculum from other grades. So if they're finding, wow, kids miss this concept along the way somehow, they can actually go into the online resources and pull out activities or computer, practice. So they can go backwards. They can also go forward, which is great too. So if you have on the same concept that they might be teaching, and I know talking with teachers at Bryantville, especially in 6th grade, they're doing that a lot. They're having to go back because it makes sense. They haven't followed this program all the way. Right. Yep. Yep. So that's part of what they're doing to ease that transition and make sure kids are prepared.
So it's a good question. So if you've paired some students in your classroom and one student is struggling more than the other student, well, that's exactly why that learning activity has probably been selected in terms of being able to identify which students. It's basically a form of assessing the student. So when you see that, you're only in the teacher has made a decision about how long they're going to do practice buddies. Maybe it's 10 minutes, maybe it's 15 minutes. At the end of that, the teacher has a better understanding of where each of those particular students is, so that for the next lesson, for the next activity, she's able to direct that, or he is able to direct that to the right place. So the teacher is able it's kind of an interesting, they talk a lot about, teachers sort of releasing control a little bit, but the teacher's job is really observing. How is the student thinking? How are they making progress? Are they able to do that work? Are they able to do it independently? Can they do it with one person? Can they do it in a group? So all of that is kind of going on in the teacher, and those are the things that the teacher is then synthesizing at the end of the day to prepare for the next day for where should the student start, which center should that student start in. Or she might be saying, I need to grab 2 or 3 of those students and work with them together with me so that we're able to see where that struggle is. So all of those tools that you're seeing are ways for the teacher to observe a student's skill level and their conceptual understanding. So EnVisions comes with a set of assessments, and they have been using those assessments. We haven't identified in terms of saying everybody at this, because it's our first year, we want to be very sort of sensitive to the fact that people are learning the program, students are getting used to the program. So we haven't formalized those benchmarks assessments as of today. That's a process that we'll be working on this spring and in the summer to make sure that the assessments are being given, but they're not being given in a way that we think is most beneficial to us in terms of understanding the program yet. So we're in that process of developing the common units across the district. They're in there, they're built in, but we haven't tweaked them all exactly the way that we want.